the hidden connection between struggle and awakening. Have you ever noticed that some of the most spiritually awake people carry shadows in their lives, patterns, compulsions, and habits that seem to pull them back no matter how much effort they make? At first, these struggles may appear as obstacles, as interruptions to the peace and clarity they seek. And yet, if we look more deeply, these very struggles often become the tools through which the divine reaches the soul. Life has a mysterious way of teaching lessons, and sometimes the patterns we label as addiction, whether to substances, behaviors, thoughts, or relationships, are not punishments. They are invitations. They are mirrors reflecting the parts of ourselves that remain asleep, that remain unaware, that are calling out to be understood. For the spiritually awake, these patterns feel paradoxical. How could something that seems so destructive, so compulsive, be a doorway to awakening? And yet, that is precisely how divine guidance often works. The universe, God, or the intelligence behind creation does not always speak in gentle, comforting whispers. Sometimes the call comes through life's intensity, through the situations we resist, through the compulsions that we cannot ignore. It arrives as a repeated pattern, a behavior that seems to trap us in cycles of craving, avoidance, or repetition, demanding attention until we can no longer turn away. These patterns, as uncomfortable as they may be, are not random. They are signals, subtle nudges pointing toward growth, toward insight, toward recognition of the truth that has always existed within. The spiritually awake often realize, slowly and painfully, that what seems like a chain is actually a teacher. Addiction, in its many forms, exposes the wounds, fears, and unhealed spaces that remain hidden beneath the surface of our consciousness. It illuminates attachments, unmet needs, and illusions of separation from life and the divine. And in facing these patterns fully, without distraction or avoidance, the seeker begins to encounter the present moment in its raw, unfiltered reality. Here's the paradox: the very compulsions or addictions that initially appear as barriers to growth are often the mechanisms that awaken awareness. They create friction, tension, and discomfort. And through that discomfort, the soul is invited to turn inward, to witness, to reflect, and to recognize the truth that has been present all along. Awareness does not arise in comfort alone, it arises in presence. And presence is most vividly felt when the distractions and patterns that obscure it are finally acknowledged. The first step then is awareness, to stop resisting, to stop judging, and to see the patterns for what they truly are. They are not signs of failure or weakness, they are opportunities. They are divine messages, inviting you to explore the deeper dimensions of yourself, to uncover the wisdom hidden behind the compulsion, and to recognize that what you have been seeking has always been present, already here, already available, waiting for recognition. The spiritually awake learn to see the hand of God not in the temporary relief, but in the insight, the clarity, and the transformation that arises when life's compulsions are fully faced, consciously and without resistance. When you start to see your patterns this way, you begin to understand something profound. Life's addiction is not a punishment. It is a sacred mirror, reflecting the soul's unrecognized depths. And in that reflection, the path to awakening begins, recognizing the subtle ways God speaks through patterns. Once you begin to observe the compulsions, habits, or addictions in your life, a remarkable truth starts to reveal itself. These patterns are not mere accidents or flaws, they are subtle invitations from the divine, ways in which God speaks to the spiritually awake. Often we are blind to these signals because they arrive wrapped in discomfort, frustration, or shame. We label them as mistakes, weaknesses, or failures, when in reality they are divine breadcrumbs guiding us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and of life. For the spiritually awake, these patterns serve as mirrors. They reflect the unseen layers of the psyche, the fears, cravings, and attachments that quietly govern behavior. They reveal the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we deserve, and what life owes us. And while these reflections can be uncomfortable, they are essential. Without the discomfort, without the repeated patterns demanding our attention, there is often no impetus to awaken more fully. In this sense, God works through life's challenges not to punish but to illuminate. The compulsion is the finger pointing toward presence, reminding us that there is more to see, more to release, more to understand. It is important to recognize that divine communication is rarely loud or obvious. It rarely comes as a clear instruction. Instead, it is subtle, hidden in the repetition of life's experiences, in the ways we are pushed to confront ourselves. Addiction or habitual behavior forces confrontation. It challenges the illusion of control, showing that we are not as separate from our patterns as we might believe. This confrontation, uncomfortable as it is, becomes a sacred space. In this space, awareness begins to arise. Awareness that says, this is not who you truly are. This is a habit. This is a reflection. Look deeper. When the spiritually awake approach these patterns without shame or judgment, something miraculous happens. The energy that once fueled compulsion transforms into awareness. The craving that once drove action becomes a teacher of attention. Each moment of recognition, each pause before reacting, becomes an act of communion with the divine. In this way, life's so-called addictions are not obstacles. They are channels through which God reaches the heart, showing the seeker the path that has always been present, but often overlooked. This process requires courage. It requires honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to face what many would rather ignore. But it also brings profound liberation. The spiritually awake learn that true freedom is not found by denying patterns or pretending they do not exist. It is found by embracing them, seeing them clearly, and allowing them to teach. In this way, even the darkest or most persistent compulsions are transformed into opportunities for awakening. Ultimately, recognizing life's patterns as divine communication shifts everything. You stop fighting yourself. You stop resisting life. You begin to see that every challenge, every repeated behavior, every moment of discomfort is a messenger, a guide pointing you back to presence, awareness, and ultimately, the infinite source of love and wisdom that has always been here. And when you see it this way, life's addiction is no longer a burden. It becomes a sacred tool, a spiritual catalyst, a mirror through which the divine touches your soul and awakens what has always been awake beneath the surface. The awakening within the struggle. As you begin to see life's addictions and habitual patterns as divine signals rather than personal failures, a deeper layer of awakening emerges. This awakening is subtle, often quiet, and it is born not from resisting life, but from engaging with it fully. When you stop trying to push away discomfort, anxiety, or cravings, you allow yourself to experience life in its raw, unfiltered form. And within this unfiltered experience, God speaks most clearly. The spiritually awake understand that the struggle itself is not the enemy, it is the vessel through which clarity and insight arrive. Addiction, in its many forms, functions like a magnifying glass. It intensifies emotions, brings unresolved pain to the surface, and forces the individual to confront aspects of themselves they might otherwise ignore. For the spiritually awake, this magnification is not a curse, but a blessing in disguise. It reveals the layers of conditioning, attachment, and fear that obscure true awareness. When we resist these patterns, when we attempt to suppress or escape them, we create more separation between ourselves and the divine presence within. But when we meet them with attention and compassion, something transformative occurs. Awareness begins to penetrate the habitual responses, and what once controlled us begins to dissolve. The key lies in presence. Presence is the unbroken thread that connects struggle to insight. Every moment of craving, every repetitive thought or compulsive behavior becomes an opportunity to witness oneself with honesty and without judgment. This witnessing is a sacred practice. It is not about eradicating the pattern nor about shaming oneself for having it. It is about observing it, understanding it, and allowing the divine intelligence within to guide the response. In this act of mindful observation, the addictive energy loses its grip. What once seemed overwhelming becomes a teacher, pointing toward deeper understanding and inner freedom. It is in the struggle itself that the spiritually awake find grace. The moments of tension, discomfort, and resistance are precisely the spaces where divine awareness enters most powerfully. You come to see that God does not only reveal itself in calm meditation, in moments of bliss, or in ideal circumstances. God is present in the chaos, in the repetitive cycles, in the parts of life you cannot control. By leaning into these moments rather than fleeing from them, you discover a profound truth. Liberation is not about escaping life's challenges. It is about engaging with them fully, consciously, and with a heart open to learning. This awakening is both humbling and liberating. You realize that life's compulsions, struggles, and challenges are not punishments or signs of failure. They are invitations to awaken more deeply, to encounter yourself without pretense, and to recognize the divine presence in every experience. Every habit, every addiction, every emotional storm becomes a doorway into awareness, a bridge to your higher self, and a reminder that awakening is not something distant. It is unfolding here and now, in the very circumstances that once seemed like obstacles. In this way, the spiritually awake come to understand life's paradox. The very struggles that once caused pain are the instruments of awakening. They are the divine mechanisms through which God reaches the soul, showing that freedom, insight, and clarity are always present. If only we are willing to see through the pattern, to meet life directly, and to allow awareness to illuminate every corner of our being. Transformation through surrender. The final stage in understanding how God reaches the spiritually awake through life's addictions is surrender. Surrender does not mean passivity, nor does it imply giving up on life or pretending struggles do not exist. Instead, it is a conscious choice to stop fighting what is, to stop resisting the very patterns that once seemed unbearable. Surrender is the acknowledgement that life in its entirety is a teacher, and that every experience, every moment of compulsion, craving, or repetition carries divine wisdom if we are willing to receive it. When we surrender, we open the door for transformation to happen naturally. This transformation is not forced. It is not the result of discipline or sheer willpower. It is an unfolding, a gentle unveiling of the clarity that has always been present within us. The spiritually awake understand that attempts to control, suppress, or eradicate addictive tendencies only reinforce the illusion of separation between themselves and the divine. Surrendering does not condone harmful behavior, but it allows us to meet our reality honestly, with awareness and compassion, and to respond from a place of presence rather than reaction. In surrender, the veil of struggle begins to lift. We see our addictions not as enemies but as mirrors, reflecting our deepest fears, desires, and attachments. Every compulsion becomes a doorway to self-understanding, and every moment of discomfort becomes an invitation to deepen our connection with God. Awareness enters these moments like sunlight through clouds, illuminating the patterns we previously ignored. We begin to realize that the divine is not distant, not abstract, not confined to holy books or sacred rituals. It is alive, active, and present in every heartbeat, every craving, every thought that arises. One of the most profound lessons of surrender is that transformation does not require perfection. The spiritually awake learn that progress is not linear, and awakening is not measured by the absence of struggle, but by the depth of presence with which we meet it. Each moment of awareness, no matter how small, chips away at the illusion of control and separation. God reaches us precisely in those ordinary, imperfect moments when we pause, observe, and let life speak to us without judgment. Surrender also brings peace. The tension that arises from resisting life, from trying to force change, from battling compulsions, begins to dissolve. In its place arises a calm confidence that life itself is guiding the process. The more we trust this process, the more clarity and insight emerge. The very things we once saw as obstacles, our habits, fears, and attachments, become instruments of awakening. They are reminders that God does not operate outside of life but within it, shaping, teaching, and revealing through every experience. Ultimately, spiritual growth through life's addictions is about aligning with this divine flow. It is about recognizing that every challenge, every repetitive pattern, every moment of inner unrest carries the potential for awakening. By surrendering, by allowing rather than forcing, the spiritually awake step into a space where transformation happens organically. They no longer chase enlightenment, for they realize enlightenment has been here all along, in their awareness, in their willingness to witness, and in their courage to embrace life fully. In this surrender, there is liberation. There is a profound understanding that the path to God is not about overcoming life, but about embracing it. Every habit, every addiction, every struggle becomes a teacher, a guide, and a doorway to the infinite presence within. The spiritually awake learn that God is always reaching out, not to punish, not to withhold, but to awaken the soul through the very life we live, the ordinary, the messy, and the miraculous, all at once.